My mom didn't call, didn't hesitate. She just looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Your sister's wedding is the family's priority. We can't come to yours. No softness, no apology." My dad blinked at his hands. Kendra smiled like it was nothing. I walked out of that house carrying the weight of every birthday, every graduation, every moment I'd been told to understand. That night, I didn't argue or plead. I simply opened the door to a life they never bothered to ask about, one decision that turned their family choice into the moment they finally had to face me. I grew up in a house where love was measured by convenience. If something was easier for my parents, that meant it was fair. And somehow, the easy choice was always my younger sister, Kendra. She was the bright one, the effortless one, the child whose smallest win became a family holiday. I learned early that my accomplishments were nice, but hers were worth celebrating. You'd think that kind of thing stops when you grow up. It doesn't. It only gets quieter, sharper. When I was 16, I watched my mother trim a family photo, literally cut the edge to make the frame neater. My shoulder stayed in the picture. My face didn't. She laughed it off, said, "Oh, honey, you're still there," and moved on, as if she hadn't just erased me from proof we were a family. I remember staring at the cropped edge, realizing I could try my hardest, shine my brightest, and still be the part someone felt comfortable cutting away. Maybe that's why I pushed myself so hard later, scholarships, long nights of building a supply chain platform from scratch, holding on when investors dismissed me. Success was the first place where no one got to edit me out. And when the company finally took off, when the numbers turned real, and I sold it for more money than anyone back home could imagine, I didn't run to show my parents. I sat alone in my apartment and let the quiet tell me everything. Some people only celebrate you when your success makes sense to them. Mine never did. Still, I believed things could be different when it came to my wedding. Adrian Steady Warm, the first person who ever told me I didn't have to earn my place, asked me to marry him in the simplest, softest way. I planned the ceremony months in advance, mailed the invitations, myself tucked pressed olive leaves inside each one. And when I handed the envelope to my parents, they smiled politely, already glancing toward the TV. "Of course we'll be there." Mom said, the way someone promises they'll drink more water next week. I spent weeks imagining the four of us in one place again, even if just for a day. Then Kendra announced her wedding, same month, same weekend, and eventually the same day. She called it destiny. My parents called it practical. I called it the moment I finally stopped pretending we were the kind of family who cared how much something meant to me. The first real crack came 2 weeks after Kendra announced her date. I was sitting in my workroom finalizing the seating chart when Mom called. Her voice had that practiced softness she used whenever she was about to choose the easier child. "Sweetheart, we've been talking. Kendra's fiancé's family can only do that weekend. You know how emotional she is. Could you adjust yours? Adjust. As if weddings were furniture, as if mine hadn't been planned for months." I swallowed, forcing calm into my voice. My invitations already went out. There was a pause, thin, careful. "You're strong, Ambar. You'll understand. Your sister would fall apart if we didn't go to hers." I stared at the window, watching dusk settle over the city. It wasn't the request that stung, it was the assumption. The familiar choreography, Kendra wants something, so everyone shifts around her, even if it means shifting me out of the frame. Dad called later that night, his tone apologetic but resigned. "You know how your mother worries? If we choose yours, Kendra will take it personally. You'll be fine." It was always that line. You'll be fine. Their blessing and their dismissal wrapped into one. For days afterward, the tension hummed beneath every conversation. Kendra sent me a text, bubbly, oblivious. "Isn't it wild our weddings are on the same day? It's like the universe aligned us." I typed a reply 3 times, deleted it 3 times, and finally left it unread. What was there to say? She'd never grown up in a world where someone else's joy swallowed hers whole. She didn't understand because she had never needed to. The turning point didn't arrive with shouting. It slid quietly into my life on a Wednesday night. Mom sent a message. "After discussing it, we've decided we can't attend your ceremony. It's too much travel back and forth. We hope you understand. No apology, no regret, just logistics my field of expertise used to justify abandoning me." I sat down on the edge of my bed, the phone glowing against the dark. My heartbeat steadied instead of racing. It surprised me. I thought I'd cry, but all I felt was an old familiar clarity rising to the surface. I texted back, "That's fine." But as soon as I hit send, I knew it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, the moment something inside me stopped bending and finally broke clean. That night, while the house was quiet and Adrian slept in the next room, I opened my laptop and scrolled through the contacts I hadn't dialed in years. Rachel, Aunt Marion, Eli, people who had watched the imbalance without ever saying it aloud. For the first time, I didn't feel like a child asking for a seat. I felt like a woman deciding who deserved one. And the answer wasn't my parents. The day everything finally collapsed didn't look dramatic from the outside. There was no shouting match, no slammed doors, just a quiet morning sunlight slipping across my kitchen counter, and a truth I could no longer swallow. I reread Mom's message. "We hope you understand," until the words blurred. Not once had they asked how I felt. Not once had they paused to consider what it meant to choose convenience over their own daughter's wedding. And the longer I stared at that screen, the more I realized the collapse wasn't happening now. It had been happening for decades. This was simply the moment I stopped pretending not to notice. I drove to the edge of the city to a small overlook where the air felt wider. Adrian joined me holding 2 mugs of tea but saying nothing. He'd always known when silence was a kindness. "They didn't even hesitate," I finally said. He exhaled slowly. "Then stop waiting for them to choose you." I nodded, feeling something settle in my chest, a shift, a click, like a lock turning, a boundary forming. That night, long after he fell asleep, I opened the folder I had hidden for months. The deed to the villa in Tuscany. My villa. 8 acres of olive groves, ancient stone walls, an open courtyard that felt like a place made for truth. I had bought it after selling my company, partly because I needed a refuge, partly because I wanted somewhere that belonged entirely to me. I had never told my parents. Why would I? They never asked. As I scrolled through the photos, the golden hills, the long stone table under lanterns, a thought formed so clearly it felt like a pulse. I could build a new kind of wedding here. Not a performance, not a competition. A gathering of people who showed up because they chose to. I sent Rachel a message first. She called immediately, no hesitation. "Please tell me you're not canceling," she said. "No," I told her, "just moving it." "To where, Tuscany?" She didn't even pause. "Send me the date. I'll handle the family." By morning, the group chat lit up Eli booking flights, Aunt Marion asking about accommodations, Uncle Ray offering to help with any setup. No one asked about my parents. No one needed to. Meanwhile, Kendra posted a countdown for her wedding, 5 days until forever. My parents flooded her comments with hearts and exclamation points. Not a single message to me. I watched it all with a strange calm. For the first time, their choices didn't sting, they clarified. I spent the next days finalizing the courtyard layout, the long table stretching toward the olive trees, the lanterns that would glow like fireflies at dusk. The villa hummed with workers sanding stone, trimming branches, stringing lights. Every sound, every hammer, every ladder scraping against stone felt like a promise kept to myself. I wasn't sabotaging their wedding. I wasn't chasing validation. I was reclaiming the story. The collapse of what we used to call family didn't leave me empty. It left room, finally, for everything real to grow. And Tuscany was the beginning of my pushback. The morning of our 2 weddings arrived carrying 2 different kinds of sunlight. In Boston, it was harsh white, bright unforgiving. In Tuscany, it spilled across the hills like warm honey. I woke before dawn in the villa, the stone floor cool beneath my feet as I stepped out onto the terrace. The olive trees shimmered in the early light leaves, whispering as if reminding me, "This is your home, your choice, your table." Workers moved quietly through the courtyard, adjusting lanterns, smoothing linen across the long table that stretched toward the grove. Everything looked impossibly grounded, ancient, yet new, exactly the life I wanted to step into. But in Boston, nothing was grounding anyone. My cousin Eli sent a photo rows of empty chairs in the ballroom, the kind wrapped in white fabric to hide how bare they looked. He captioned it, "This is going to blow up soon." Another message came from Rachel, a picture of my parents standing by the entrance dressed perfectly, but their smiles tight, confused. No one from the extended family had arrived. Not one. And Kendra, my sister, kept refreshing the guest list on the planner's tablet, her expression tightening each time. "They must be late," she murmured to her fiancé, but even she didn't sound convinced. Meanwhile, in Tuscany, guests trickled into the courtyard, breathless from travel, glowing with excitement. Grandma Elise arrived wearing a soft blue dress, her silver hair pinned back, with an olive branch I'd placed on her vanity that morning. "My girl," she said, cupping my face with both hands. "Look at you. Look how far you've come." I felt my throat tighten. Every part of me wanted to soak in that moment because love that shows up feels different. It carries weight, presence, truth. As the sun climbed the courtyard filled with familiar voices, Rachel herding her kids, Uncle Ray greeting the musicians, Aunt Marion taking photos of the vineyard as if she'd never seen anything so sacred. For the first time in my life, I wasn't an afterthought. I was the center, but not because the world bent around me, because I had built a world that didn't require bending at all. Back in Boston, the ceremony was about to start. Kendra stood at the aisle bouquet trembling in her hands. The planner paced behind her. "Where is everyone?" she whispered sharply. Her fiancé shrugged helplessly. My parents pretended to smile. Then it happened. Rachel sent another photo to the family group chat, the one everyone had muted for years, but somehow still checked out of habit. It showed me stepping into the courtyard sunlight, catching the silk of my dress. Behind me, guests rose from their seats beneath the grapevines. Lanterns glowed softly overhead. Tuscany wrapped around us like a painting. Within seconds, more pictures followed Eli, capturing the long table, the wildflowers woven into the stone arch, Grandma laughing with her hands in the air. A video appeared, Adrian taking my hand, his voice steady as he spoke his vows. And then someone in Boston gasped loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear. My mother's face drained of color. She grabbed my father's sleeve so tightly he winced. "Kendra," she whispered, "they're all in Italy." Kendra's bouquet slipped. Her breath hitched. And for the first time in our lives, she realized the world did not orbit her. My father looked around the half-empty room, his jaw tightening. Why didn't anyone say they weren't coming? Because they didn't owe you an explanation, I thought, from thousands of miles away. They owed themselves one. In Tuscany, I didn't know the exact moment their wedding collapsed, but I felt the shift. A strange stillness moved through the courtyard just as I finished my vows. Not sadness, something like release, as if some final thread connecting me to the version of family I once begged for had quietly snapped. After the ceremony, we walked toward the long table under the vines. Guests laughed, passing wine, clinking glasses. The sky warmed into amber. Lanterns flickered on one by one. The air smelled of rosemary and baked bread. Adrian leaned close. "They know, don't they?" I nodded. "They're seeing the life they never bothered to ask about. And the life you chose instead of them," he added. But it wasn't revenge. Not really. It was clarity served gently, honestly, in the form of a wedding they never imagined I could create. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "Is this where you are?" Another from Mom. "Why didn't you tell us you had a place like this?" Then from Kendra. "Is this some kind of joke?" I put the phone face down. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "They're spiraling, aren't they?" "Probably," I said. "You okay?" I looked at the candlelight dancing across the long table, the table I built, the table filled by people who chose me. I've never been more okay. In Boston, things got worse. A guest whispered too loudly, "Didn't her family used to be huge?" Another said, "Why's everyone in Italy?" Someone showed a photo of my villa, the caption reading Ambar's Wedding Tuscany. My mother sat down abruptly, pressing a hand to her chest. My father rubbed his temples. The planner signaled for the band to start, but even music felt hollow. Kendra stared at her reflection in a glass door. Perfect makeup, perfect dress, perfect everything, yet completely alone in the moment she'd built her whole identity around. And then she said the quiet part out loud. Everyone chose her. No screaming, no tantrum, just the truth finally spoken. While their night dissolved, mine bloomed. The musicians played soft strings under the warm Tuscan sky. Adrian whispered something about forever. Grandma wiped her eyes. Rachel's kids danced barefoot between the lantern shadows. Every sound felt like healing. Later, as we lit candles along the olive grove, I caught myself glancing toward the horizon, not out of longing, but out of closure. The family I had spent a lifetime trying to earn was never mine to keep. The one gathered around me now, the one laughing, clapping, raising glasses, was built from choice, not obligation. Near midnight, the last message came from Mom, I hope. You're happy. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood happiness doesn't need their permission. And in the quiet of the Tuscan night, surrounded by the people who showed up, I breathed deeper than I had in years. The climax of their story was collapse. The climax of mine was freedom. The morning after our wedding, Tuscany felt different, lighter, as if the whole villa had exhaled with me. Sunlight filtered through the olive branches, scattering gold across the courtyard where petals from the night before still clung to the stones. Grandma Elise sat beside me on the terrace, hands wrapped around a warm cup. "You built something beautiful," she said. "Not just last night, your life." I didn't know I needed those words until they landed. Messages kept buzzing through my phone, my parents apologizing in fragmented sentences, Kendra insisting she'd been blindsided, Dad asking when we could talk properly. But none of it carried urgency anymore. Their choices had already spoken for them. What mattered now was the kind of family I wanted going forward. So I answered only one message, Rachel's, "We're staying 2 more days. Breakfast? Yes," I wrote. Always. Adrian joined me at the railing, slipping an arm around my waist. "Whatever happens next," he said, "you're not facing it alone." And for the first time in my life, I believed that. Not because someone promised it, but because they had already shown up when it mattered. The aftermath wasn't chaos. It was clarity, quiet, steady, and entirely mine. In the end, I learned something simple. Family isn't who shares your name, but who shows up when your heart is on the line. I stopped asking for a seat at their table and built one of my own, and the right people found it. If this story stayed with you, share it. Tell me where you're listening from and hit subscribe for the next one.